Right, we're going to make a simple flash movie called Sun, and it has the sun rising from behind mountains and setting. If I show it to you now by clicking on Control Enter, you can see the sun comes up, blinks and goes back down again. It's quite simple. Excuse me. You'll see there's a sun in the library. It's got a purple wheel symbol that says that it's actually a movie clip, and so I've got 4 layers: the sun, the sky, the hills and the grass. So how do we go about making this? Well, I'm going to start by making a new Flash file. I'm going to make an ActionScript 3. I'm going to change the background colour to a blue sky of some sort and go OK. I'll leave it the default width of 550 and 400. You can change that, you can make it 600, you can do what you like really, but I'll leave mine at 550. You can double click to change those and we'll go OK. So now I have my canvas, it's blank, it's got a sky. We can put clouds and things like that in at a later date. For the moment though, I'm just going to double click on layer 1 over down the side here and call it sky, and it's my background layer. I'm going to make the mountains next, so to do that I'll need a new layer, and I'll double click on layer 2 and I will call that hills. I'm going to use a pen tool or a brush tool to draw the hills. I could use a pencil with smoothing, and but I'll just use a pen, the brush tool. I'll make the brush rather fairly large, and I'll leave it as a circular shape. And I need to choose a colour for my hills, so I'm going to choose a purpley colour. You can choose purple, green, brown, whatever you want really, it's up to you. You could go with a dark green. I'm just going to leave it as a bit of a purple colour, and I'm going to click and draw a series of hills around the back. I'm going to go down here like that and just leave that. And my fill, if I get my fill bucket, it's already selected the colour. Get my fill bucket, my paint bucket tool, and click and fill it in. That's done. I'll turn my hills off for the moment. Down here you'll see an eye tool. You can turn layers on and off. If you click on the individual layer, it will see you turn the layer off. You don't eliminate it, you just turn it off so that you can work on other layers. You can also lock layers. There's a lock here too. Once you've made a few layers, you don't want to interrupt them, you should lock them. I'll turn the hills off, and I'm going to draw the grass now. I'm going to use a rectangle tool, but before I do, I'm going to select my colours again. So I'll go up to my colour bar, click on that. There's a couple of greens up there, doesn't really matter too much, I'll just grab any old green. I want my stroke to be blank, so I'm going to click on my stroke colour, and over here you'll see the square with a red line through it that says make it blank. So I've got a blank, no stroke, and I've got a green colour. Go back to my rectangle tool over here, hold it down. You can also see there's oval tools. We'll be using the oval tool later, and there's a rectangle tool there. Click on that and draw my rectangle. Okay, it's telling me I need the layers. So before I can do that, perhaps I should make another layer. So I'm going to make a new layer. Double click on the layer and call this grass. And now I can draw my rectangle. It can be bigger than the background, the canvas, and when I turn my hills back on, you can see that they sit in the background and you go, well, it's a bit funny looking. It actually does work. Once I undo that. Once you hit Control Enter, you'll see it plays and you've got the hills sitting in the background, so they look perfectly acceptable. I don't really like that last bit, so I might just rub a bit of that out. And I'm ready now to do my sun. Now to do the sun, before we do the sun, we're going to put the sun inside a new layer, but I won't even put the new layer in yet. What I'm going to do is set up my whole movie. So I'm going to set my movie up to go for, say, 125 frames. And if I click on that first layer, then click on the last layer underneath the 125, holding the shift, I select all three layers. When I hit the F5 button, that fills in everything. Notice it doesn't add any keyframes, it just adds frames, but the frames are the same. That means that the grass will go for 125 frames, the hills will go for 125 frames, the sky will go for 125 frames. The whole thing is running for 125 frames. Now I'm ready to go and get my sun. Well, the sun, I'm going to make a movie, so to do that, in fact, why don't we save our whole project while we're here, because we've put a little bit of effort in so far. So I'll go File, I'll save it as, and I'll call it Sunrise. There's one called Sunrise already. I'll save that as Sunrise. And I'm ready to start my next thing. Let's go to Insert a new symbol, or Control F8. This symbol I'm going to call Sun, and it will be a movie clip. You can make graphics and you can make buttons. When you're doing tweens, which is motion that's automatically generated by Flash in between frames, it needs to be a movie clip or it needs to be a graphic. In this case it's going to be a movie clip, and I'll go OK. Now notice we've been taken to a completely different area. Up the top here you'll see it says Scene 1. That takes me back to the scene. If I want to get back to where I was, the sun here, it's in the library over here on the right hand side. I'll double click on the sun and it takes me into that whole area again. Down the bottom here you've got layers. You've got layer 1, and I'm going to call this layer the sun. Now what I will do is I'm going to make that go for about 100 frames, but I'll put my object in there first. And my object is going to be an oval, but I don't want just any old oval, I want it to be yellow. So before I make my oval, if I made my oval now, what colour would it be? In fact, it would be green. It wouldn't have a stroke, which I'm happy with. So I'm going to choose my colour. I can choose it from down here as well. I could choose it from up here, or I could choose it from down there. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to pick a bright yellow. I want a strong yellow background. There's my thing. Now I'm going to get my oval tool, and I'm going to hold the shift button down and drag my oval tool to create my sun. Holding the shift makes the item form a perfect circle. Whilst I'm here, I'm going to add a mouth. I'm going to show you a little trick here with the mouth. Over here in the properties, we're going to go and have a look at the properties for the mouth. But the mouth, I'm going to use my line tool, and it's going to be black. By default, it selects a black stroke. I might zoom in first. So if I hold if I go over here, I can make it a little bit larger, 200%. Just drag my line there so I can see a little bit more clearly. There's my line tool. Under properties of my line, I can make my stroke equal to 1 or 2. I might make it 2, just a little bit larger. And let's go and draw my mouth. I'm going to draw it as a straight line initially. And you go, well, that's a bit funny. Why do you do that? Well, if I go to my selection tool and hover over my line, I get a little shape happening. When I click and drag, I can change my shape from a line, which is straight, to a circle. And I'm pretty happy with that. Now, I'm going to do the eyes in a different layer. So I will click the frame 100, hit F5 to make it go for 100 frames. You'll see why it's slightly shorter than the other one in a second when we've completed it. And I'll leave that frame and create another layer for my eyes. Let's double click on that and I'll call it eyes. And I will let's get ready to do our eyes in a second. Now I'll go back to my first frame. This time I'm going to get my oval tool again, but instead of having a fill colour of yellow, I want a fill colour of black, and I want a line colour of nothing. So I get to draw two small eyes. Now I'm only going to draw one eye initially, and then I'm going to copy it. I'll show you how to do that in a second. Let's just make this a little bit bigger. 400%, that's lovely, so I can see what I'm doing. Hold my shift button down, draw my eye. Lovely, there's a lovely eye, happy about that. I'm going to go back to my selection tool, hit V or click on the black arrow. Go, click on the eye. Now if I hold the Alt key down and drag my eye, I get a perfect copy of it. So now I have two eyes. They're not in the same layer as the sun. I can turn my sun and the mouth off, and I can turn my eyes off. But I'm happy about that. This is where I start to put some bits and pieces in. Now I'm going to make the eyes blink. I'm going to click on to frame 45 or 46, somewhere around about there. Click on that and hit F6, and that turns it into a keyframe. I'll go up to frame 50, I'll hit F6 again and turn that into another keyframe, and then line F55 and hit F6 and turn that into a keyframe. Or maybe 54, hit that F6 and turn that into a keyframe. So what I've done is I've created some keyframes, which a keyframe is when an action changes. So my eyes are open, they're open here, they're open right up to 46. Now I'm going to make them close at frame 50 and then open back up again. I'm going to make it blink, if you like. I want you to click onto frame 50. There's a free transform tool, which is hit the Q button or click on the free transform tool, and I'm going to drag the eyes down like that. In fact, I'm going to take a notice of where the center of the eyes is, which is this point here. I think that's it's my Y position actually. I'm going to change the height of the eyes to 1, and I'm going to move this down a little bit. That Y doesn't look right, so I'm going to move them down to 7.8, so 3.9 I think is half of 7.8 minus 3.9. That's probably about the middle. So there to there. I'm clicking at 45 and I click at 50. That looks pretty good. I'm not sure if it'll work, we'll find out. Now in between frames 45 and 50 now we're going to need create what's called a tween. If I click somewhere in that section, you have some choices. have some choices. You have a motion tween, a shape tween. We'll choose a classic tween. We'll go to the other ones later on in another lesson. And I'm going to go here and choose another classic tween as well. Let's go back to frame 35, hit enter and see what happens. Okay, did that work? It seems to work. Try again. Now they've gone up a little bit, so that's kind of, I'm going to just click on those eyes again here in frame 50 and just go down with my arrow and try again. Maybe they've gone up a bit there. Perfect there. Let's go back here. I'll go down one more with my arrow. Try one more. See what happens. Ah, perfect. Sometimes that happens. You have to fiddle around with the settings so that they just look right. Now, that is a movie. All it does is the sun sits there and blinks once. I could have made it shorter, I could have made it longer, but I'm happy with that. I'm going to go now to scene 1. Now we're ready to do the sun and insert the sun into our image. I'm going to make another layer, and I will put it in the front just so I can see it. I'll drag my layer up and I'll rename it sun. And I'm going to do it over a couple of things. What I'll do is I'll drag my sun up, make it go up, stop and make it come down. At frame 30 I want you to click into frame 30 in the sun layer and hit F6. That will make a keyframe there. And let's go back to frame 1. Go to my library. I'm going to drag my sun into my stage. I'll put it there for the moment. And at frame 30, let's undo that for the moment. I should have put the sun there. Okay, go to the frame 1. My apologies, undo that. I want you to drag the sun into the first frame and then go to frame 30 and hit F6. At frame 30 though, we want the sun to be in a different spot. So I'm going to hold the shift button down, use my arrows because it makes it jump up more quickly. Use my up arrow, there's my sun up in the sky. So the sun's going to start here at frame 1 and finish here in frame 30. I'm going to do a right click and I'm going to create a classic tween. I could put a motion tween. I'll show you motion tweens another time. And you said the sun actually does rise. If I hit enter, the sun rises. It won't blink at this stage. It won't blink until the movie is actually playing as a full movie. Let's go now to frame 70 and hit F6 again. So it starts off at frame 70. And at frame 100 I want the sun to be back down again, so I'll hit F6 and I'm going to hold my shift button on frame 100, hold it down using my down arrow, right click between those two and create a classic tween. So now what happens is my sun goes up, stays there, and my sun comes down. Last but not least, I need to put it behind my hills. Over here in my layers, I'm going to click on my sun and drag it down behind the hills. Let's go Control Enter and test our little film. Fantastic. And File and Save. So there you have it. So what we've done is we've introduced a number of elements. We've introduced a movie, which is the sun, inside a movie, which is the whole thing. We've got layers, the grass, the hills, the sun, and the sky. And if I double click on my sun, you can see I've used keyframes and transformed a shape and introduced a tween to do all of that. I can go back to my scene 1, just test it once again because I'm not pleased about that. And it comes down. Now, as a challenge to you, I was wondering perhaps you could yourself introduce some clouds into the sky and see if they could move across the sky or something like that. But for the moment, we shall save what we've done, and thanks for listening.